First up is Gran Turismo, based on a true story, and that is literally the title of the film. Like, that is the whole package deal for the name of the film, which you know is going to be a really bad sign. So, if you are interested in watching a 2-hour and 15-minute long commercial, have I got a movie for you? I thought this, oh my goodness, I am not the target audience for this movie in any way, shape, or form. I can acknowledge that going into it. I have played Gran Turismo. I've played it like in the arcade. It is not my game of choice. No shade to anybody who it's their favorite game of all time. It's not for me. I'm not a NASCAR person. I'm not a Formula One person. My sister actually got really into Formula One in the last few years. So I have weirdly some knowledge of racing based on osmosis from hanging out with her. She also watches Drive to Survive on Netflix, which I would recommend over that because I can plug into those episodes and be interested versus this, which I wanted to just claw my eyeballs out at some points. I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but this movie truly is just a commercial, but it's not just a commercial for the game Gran Turismo, which I could maybe be okay with. It's also a commercial for Sony, who makes Gran Turismo, who also owns the studio who made this film, so synergy, oh joy of joys. But then it's also a commercial for like the car companies, and then the sport of racing, and then certain other sponsors are featured in it. It's just like, is there an ounce of creativity in this film? The answer is no. So what I did not realize or piece together is that this is truly based on a true story, and if I'd known more about that going in, maybe I would have felt more generous to it. It's the story of Jan Mardenborough, who, I guess Nissan and Sony and, Gran Turismo, the game, actually ran a contest to see if someone could translate their skills playing this racing game into becoming a professional race car driver. Sure, it sounds absurd. It sounds like a movie. It sounds like maybe it could be a good movie. It was not a good movie. There are parts of it that are classic racing film, which I thought those worked okay, but they really spent so much extra time on them. I actually had the stage set for me a little bit with James Mangold's Ford v Ferrari, which is also a movie I was not particularly interested in. For that one, I remember thinking, this is the slowest moving movie about fast things that I've ever seen, but Gran Turismo might take the cake on this. Ironically, they both also take place at Le Mans, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's this very complicated 24-hour race that, anyway, so it's a real race. But yeah, so I knew a little bit about that race because of Ford v Ferrari. I knew a little bit about the world of racing because of my sister and Formula One and Drive to Survive. But this movie does this weird thing where it's trying to distinguish itself. And it's like, okay, well, how do we get how do we constantly remind you that this is about a video game at the end of the day? And so they do these really overcomplicated visual techniques that constantly interrupt the flow of the actual race. And like races and sports and competition by nature are, we get sucked into them, and that can actually be a huge bridge or band-aid for a non-sporting audience. But when you intentionally interrupt the momentum of it, you absolutely dissipate any sort of investment an audience has in it. Imagine if you're watching like Usain Bolt run the 100 meter and then every 30 meters there's a pause and a replay and whatever it is. It's like, that's not interesting at all. Just like, let it play out. But I think it was so obsessed with trying to be like, well, we have to show that, this is how he translated his video game skills over. Let's do this and let's do that. And I just, it's so undermined it. I think some of the actors are trying their damnedest. David Harbour and Archie Madquay, I want to give special shout outs to. Archie Madquay plays Jan Mardenborough. David Harbour plays his coach, mechanic man, etc. I think they are trying their damnedest, and I don't want to knock them for that. And then the rest of the cast, what is happening here? So you have Jaimin Hansu as Steve Mardenborough, his dad, which, okay, fine, he does a fine job. Jerry Halliwell, aka Ginger Spice, plays his mom, which, and I, again, this is thanks to my sister that I knew this. It is because she is married to a Formula One team owner that I'm sure somehow funding, etc., got her way in here. And then you have Darren Barnett from Never Have I Ever. And then Orlando Bloom as a marketing guy. And I sat there watching it going, how did I ever like you as an actor or a pretty face or whatever? Because this successfully undid any positive. I was like, oh, Legolas is dead to me. How dare, it just, it was almost so bad that I had a good time. And maybe if I'd had more friends with me, or maybe if we'd had, drinks or something of the sort, it would have been a better experience. But I just sat there just like pawing at my face going, when will this end? Because like I said, there's so much setup happening, and it's such a generic story. Even though the actual circumstances are a little bit out of the ordinary, there's nothing original about it, or the things that they think they're being original about take away from the film. So at the end of the day, you're left there with, just an absolute lemon of a movie. And there were a few moments where I was like, oh, I could have seen, like between David Harbour and Archie Madquay, I was like, oh, there's maybe this had a world in which if it'd just been a straightforward racing movie, it would have been okay. But I think there was so much interference from so many stakeholders, so many just trying to impress so many people, trying to get so many brand names on it that it did not work out. In fact, there's a line in the movie, and I'm not going to spoil them too much, but they say this whole thing is a marketing bonanza, and that is the most accurate line in the movie. I feel like this movie made the Mario movie look like Citizen Kane. Just brutal. I would rather watch that a million times over than have to watch this movie again. I know people enjoyed it, and I actually really like the director. I like Neil Blomkamp, which is part of the reason I was like, this maybe could be good, but this is not the revenge he was looking for in terms of making a video game movie, because he was supposed to do Halo and all this stuff. But I don't know who to recommend this film to, because I don't think it's for racing fans, because it's so slow at the points that it's slow. It's not classic racing, or the whole point of it is it's outsiders joining racing. So there's that whole factor. I think Gran Turismo video game fans might think it's fine, but the whole thing about it was about like the race car driving part of it, not necessarily, they're taking them out of the seats, the consoles, the whatever it is. So it's like, well, that's not the average Gran Turismo player. And then just regular movie fans. I can't in good conscience recommend this to you. So I'm going to give Gran Turismo, based on a true story, a 2 out of 5. And I think, again, that is being generous, but some of the acting performances helped elevate that score a little bit. The other film I have this week, and let me tell you, this was a brutal week for me, is Vacation Friends 2. And I recall seeing Vacation Friends. I remember it was not peak pandemic, but it was certainly pandemic, times, and so desperate for new movies, etc. And I remember thinking, this is fine. It stars John Cena, Lil Rel Howery, Yvonne Orji, Meredith Hagner, Carlos Santos, and this time they're joined by Steve Buscemi and Ronnie Chang. And this is a boondoggle film, right? This is hey, we are going to go film at a very nice location, and it's going to be a tax write-off, and we're probably going to get to, bring our families or whatever it may be. And if I was in the position to get to make a boondoggle film like this, I would absolutely take them up on it. So, I can't begrudge them that, but my God, do I wish I did not have to see it. The premise of the first one was that these two couples, Lil Rel Howery and Yvonne Orji, and John Cena and Meredith Hagner meet on vacation, and they're two very opposite couples. By the end of it, they become friends. This one, they reunite to go on vacation again, and Lil Rel Howery is also on a business trip, and, John Cena and Meredith Hagner are chaotic, etc., and put some of it at risk, and then Steve Buscemi plays Meredith Hagner's father in this one, who's a new character in this, and jeopardizes further their relationship. And I just, I know that the characters are supposed to be absurd and caricatures effectively, but I didn't laugh once during this movie, like at all. There are some very uncomfortable situations that I think my sense of comedy, actually does swing pretty wide, but this it's just not funny, and it's more uncomfortable. And I feel like the whole time, similar actually to Gran Turismo, it felt very tedious. And at least with this one, it's sub 2 hours. Gran Turismo, I thought maybe if they'd shaved like 30 minutes off of it, maybe it would have been more palatable, but I think they would have had to cut all the things that were Gran Turismo related. But the plot of this makes absolutely no sense. Every single turn is just frustrating. And I don't know anybody who acts like these characters. I don't know anybody who knows anybody who acts like these characters. Maybe that is just the small little sheltered bubble I live in. But I mean, come on. And again, also, like, the film doesn't necessarily require you to know anything about them going into it, which is good and bad, because I had forgotten everything in the first film, and then this didn't even try to remind me. In fact, it like fast forwarded some things, and I was just like, what am I watching here? There's a lot of very talented people who I actually really like in this film. And so I don't know how it could go so absurdly wrong. Like, the chemistry is off. The jokes and the situations I didn't find funny. Maybe if this had come out like 10 years ago, people, Hangover era, I feel like people would have thought it was much funnier. But I don't begrudge the fact that they got to go on this vacation. More power to them, but I don't think it's worth I don't even want to say, I can't even in good conscience say go back and watch the first one instead, because it was also so forgettable that I just went into this one not remembering anything. So, honestly, this is just a warning week for you for both films. I'm going to give Vacation Friends a 1.6 out of 5.